I think we're live, Reem. How are you today?
I am awesome. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, me too. I'm looking forward to talking about this topic. As you know, I'm passionate about habits, breaking in, building habits, and all things associated with that. And I was hoping you could kind of walk me through a conversation, and I can focus on today on the breaking a habit. And we all have some habit that we want to break, or we've broken a habit recently. For me, last year I gave up drinking alcohol. And that was a big one because I had, it's socially acceptable. It's in business, and it's everywhere you look. When I travel a lot, it's everywhere. And so that was a big habit for me to break. And I did it last year. So I feel like I now can speak not only from being an expert in studying habit building and breaking, but also having done a very difficult one. So there's one. So how about you? How are you today?
Well, hey everyone. I'm excited to be here. I think I relate that a habit, I have a lot of habits that I really want to get rid of. And I know this conversation is going to be very beneficial. And I just want you to walk me through the breaking a habit framework. And I don't know, maybe by the end of of this live show, I have a framework on how to break a habit. And
Yeah,
I'm so
yeah,
excited
let's
for
do
that.
that. And let's start by the kind of the purpose of this is to help people understand this framework and habit breaking. You can Google it and you can scroll through a bookstore and you'll see 100 books on habits, and they're all most of them, I've read most of them, and they're all well written and they're useful. But sometimes we just need a little cheat sheet, something that makes it really simple to follow, the steps to follow, and the way that you can start attacking things. And so this live stream, hopefully by the end of it, you'll understand that framework. You can download the frameworks. They're in the chat session on LinkedIn and Facebook. I'll put them on YouTube. They're a PDF. You can download one PDF and get the build and the break framework. So that's available to you. So hopefully by the end of the session, we will have addressed that for people. So why don't we start by understanding how bad habits, what is the kind of the chemistry around it? And so Reem, excuse me for a minute, but what happens when we build habits over time, particularly habits that we don't think about, that we just do on a daily basis, is we create a neural pathway. And that pathway is, think of it as a road through a neighborhood, right? And you always take a certain path through that neighborhood, and it just becomes a habit because it is what it is. That's the direction you go. But the same thing happens in our brain. The interesting thing about neural pathways are they are built, and it's very, very subject to when you see a cue, that trigger hits, and then you do the habit, right? Well, the same thing can be trained to not do that, right? So what we're talking about when we talk about breaking habits is rewriting a new neural pathway, to a new pathway. So instead, what we'll talk about triggers, and we'll talk about giving it a name and things like that. Instead of going through that neighborhood, now there's a stop sign, and you may turn left instead of going straight, right? So there's ways to create these new neural pathways. And by the way, it's not just willpower. People always say, well, if you want to stop smoking, just stop. Well, unfortunately, in a lot of habits that we have, there may be a chemical dependency, or there may be a reaction to that neural pathway that sparks something. The biggest one is dopamine, right? And we've heard about it, we may have read about it. You and I've talked about you scrolling social media. There's a dopamine hit when you hit something in there that you like, or somebody liked something that you did. And that dopamine is hard to replace, but you can replace it, and that new neural pathway can take over. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So I just spit out a lot at you, but anything you want to ask there or talk about?
Well, I really want to talk with you about why is it so hard breaking a habit, because just like you said, willpower alone doesn't work for long. And I've been there. Everyone has been there. So let's start there. Why is it so hard?
Well, it's that neural pathway. It's that pathway that you've done every day for 30 years, maybe not you 30 years, for me 30 years, not inconceivable, but it's just something that we've done. We've built it into who we are, good or bad. And sometimes we have good habits too, right? But there could be modifications you want to a habit. Maybe you do like drinking a cup of coffee a day or 2 cups of coffee a day, but you don't need that third and fourth one. So maybe you're breaking the habit is just limiting. So it's sometimes not always just breaking, but it's a change of behavior. And so when you think about that type of thing, it's just behavior modification. And the good thing is, even though it may have taken 10 years to get that habit that you want to break, it was a choice to make that habit. We have a choice to break that habit too. And we just need to follow a simple framework, something that makes it simple for us to do. And like you said, unfortunately, willpower just doesn't work long-term. Motivation is an excellent thing. It's an excellent emotion to feel. but it just wanes over time, or it may wane up and down. And so you just need a system to sometimes pick you up a little bit from that little fall. Even if you skip a day of a habit, getting back on track the next day, that kind of thing is really important.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, all right. So let's dive into it. Let's talk about how to break a habit and walk us through the framework. So can
Okay.
you talk to us and walk us through it?
Okay. And feel free to jump in if you want to interrupt me. I'm going to go through the 5 steps, and then
I'm
we
actually
can
going to write notes.
Okay.
I'm going to
Okay.
write notes because I have
As
habits
long as
that I
you're
want
not
to break.
scrolling your social media while we're doing it. I'm kidding.
It's locked.
Very good. Well, let's talk about breaking a habit. I put it into 5 key steps. The first one is understand the trigger. So I was talking about neural pathways earlier. The first thing we need to understand is what is the trigger that the next behavior you do is that habit. So first, identifying the trigger. The second one is make it harder. So whatever that habit is, if you can start making it inconvenient for you to do, the more likely you are to succeed. The third step is give it a name. We all like an enemy, and you don't have to choose something ugly. So you might choose to if you want to, but giving it a name helps you personify it. And when you personify it, then you can actually relate to it in a different way. It's not just that smoking habit or that drinking habit or that sleeping in, whatever it may be. It's now got a name and it means something to you. Then obviously the fourth step is an important one. It's try to replace it with something that's more positive to you. So if eating snacks is something that you want to stop, maybe just before you do that, you take a pause and you go around the block. You walk around the block or around your building if it's in the daytime and you're in an office. Just replace it with something just to give yourself a pause before that habit kind of automatically gets moved in. And then the last thing that I think is valuable is tracking it. Whatever you use to track it, it could be a simple piece of paper, journal. We have an app that you can use. There's a lot of different apps that can do it, but tracking it for 2 reasons. The one you want to track it is to see your own progress. You can celebrate victories. You made it a week, you made it a month, you made it 3 days, whatever your thing is. Seeing those streaks, so gamifying it a little bit, will help you. And you can also reflect on those urges and those triggers, right? So you can go back and say, okay, what were the things that triggered that? And now you can reflect and try to change that situation. So that's the 5. So how do you want to talk about it, Reem?
Well, let's give an example to it. Let's say I snack every day, like at night, and it's not helping with my weight. It's not helping with eating healthy. Let's walk through the 5 stages and let's just understand the trigger, and then make it harder, and then give it a name, and then what? Replace it with a positive, and then track it. Right?
Yeah, exactly. So let's start with identifying triggers. So snacking late at night, for example, or even scrolling social media, I think these 2 are very similar, are usually a tradition of boredom, right? So you're maybe sitting around your apartment, your home, and you're bored, and it becomes a habit to go to the refrigerator and grab something, or go to the pantry and grab something. And so that trigger, just identifying that trigger, say, okay, what is it that makes me want to go have that snack? Or what is it that makes me want to scroll on that social media account? Is it boredom? Is it something else? But once you identify it, then when the next time that happens, you can say, okay, I'm bored. So what can I do about boredom, right? And then you go address it that way. Does that make sense? So that's identifying that trigger. And then the making it hard piece for, let's do late night snacking again, is either remove the snacks from your home that you don't want to eat. Maybe you replace it with a healthy snack versus something that has additives in it and that you don't want to put in your body. So make it just more difficult, or make it somewhere that it takes, even if you don't remove it from your house, but make it somewhere where it's not in the same place every time. Even just a subtle change will make you think about that again. Okay, that came here for that bag of chips and it's not here. And that thought process will say, okay, wait a minute, do I really want that bag of chips? Even though it's on the top shelf, it made you consciously think about that pathway that you want to do, right? And then the third one, give it a name. That's just a fun one, I think. If you say, okay, my late night snacking's name is Bob or Harry or the devil or whatever you want to say it is, give it a name, because then when you go and you open that pantry door and you see that bag of chips name is and I don't want to participate in that, right?
Oh, so, Bob.
What? Bob?
I was like, oh, Bob, you're getting me every night.
Exactly. And then replace it for snacking. It could be, replace it with a healthier snack. It could be take a pause, go do some deep breathing, go walk around the block, whatever it is to get your mind off of it. Sometimes you'll hear this a lot in some things that I do, and I hear it in other methodologies, is take a pause. Just give yourself a pause for whatever you're doing. If you just take that pause, it actually can refresh your mindset and your body to say, okay, do I really need to do that? Right. And it's just, it's not talking about, I'm not talking about go do deep breathing for 30 minutes. I'm just saying, take 3 deep breaths, stop what you're doing and take that pause. And it just allows your mind to stop that pathway that we were on. And now you can see that you can go left, you can go right, you can go straight, whatever. You can then make different choices. Right. So replacing it with something good may take that pause, and then you decide what that good looks like. For scrolling, it's an interesting thing because we've got a generation or two now of kids that grew up with an iPad, so they would stop talking at the dinner table, whatever. And I'm not criticizing that. I'm just saying that's where we are. So, you might replace that with reading. You might replace that with turn on a movie, an audio book, something that's still giving you the stimulation, but it's not just senseless. Maybe you can use it for a time for education, for example. So that replacing becomes something it is a good choice. You need to make a choice of what you're going to do in place of that bad habit for you to really get onto that goal. And then tracking it is easy, right? You just have the tracker. If it's the Time Bandit app, you every day or whenever you can go in and say, I did it. I accomplished that task today. And it shows you streaks and things like that. So it says you've not snacked Reem for 13 days, which makes you feel good, right? And you can celebrate.
We hope. We hope that's it. But again, it all starts with knowing what's causing the habit. So it makes it easier to break it. So we just need to focus at first. Why am I scrolling, or why am I snacking? Is it stress? Is it boredom? And then that one is actually the hard part. Oh, we got a comment.
We do. Ahmad wrote in there, and he said that fasting is a secret to break any habit. And I'm not talking about food fasting. He's absolutely right. What he's suggesting there is abstain from it. And again, abstinence is an interesting and powerful thing to break a habit. Sometimes if there's a chemical dependency, there's cautions that you need to have in there because your body may react negatively to certain abstinence models. But abstaining from certain activities is absolutely something that you can do. And that's what I meant when take a pause, right? So I think Ahmad may have been talking about broader fasting of that activity, which is absolutely powerful if you can do it. But if you can't, it's that pause, that just take that minute to say, do I really need to do this? Do I really need to see Bob face to face, or can I go for a walk and refresh myself? Things like that.
I just love
and
that
if anybody's watching this, name Bob, for goodness sake, we're
sorry.
Yeah, exactly.
But giving it a name is the fun part, actually, and it's resonating with us a lot.
Yeah,
because it makes everything fun, and breaking a habit is hard. So when you have fun while doing it, is actually going to just take a little bit out of it. So. Yeah,
I agree. And I think naming it and tracking it are really the fun parts, because everybody likes to feel like they accomplished something today. Right. And my habits, a couple of my personal habits are yoga, walking certain volumes per day. And that's been steadily increasing, things like that. It's just nice to go back. Like, I don't do yoga every day, but I want to do three to 5 times a week. And so when I reflect back, I can see, out of the month, I met that goal, every week. And it's just a nice way to reward yourself to say, I feel better because of it. Right. So.
Yeah. And actually, I want to say something. While you're talking now, I remember that I've stopped drinking soda. And then while I was doing this, I was doing it the old fashioned way. I was writing down how many days did I stop drinking soda. And that actually helped me a lot. And it always felt amazing to look back and see how far I've come. So now that you're mentioning an app to track it, whether it's Time Bandit or another app, I'm just saying that, I just remembered that I actually stopped drinking soda by tracking it, and just feeling that I've came so far not to break that or like get back to drinking soda. So, and having an app while on your phone is just gonna make everything easier, because we're on our phones 24/7, and I know.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that. So you had mentioned to me that scrolling sometimes is social scrolling is sometimes a time waster for you, that you want to moderate. You don't necessarily want to stop it. You just want to moderate, which is also breaking a bad habit. You're giving yourself limits to it. So let's think about what that, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but what do you think a trigger is? Is it boredom? Is it just a need to check in? What do you think triggers that social media? I don't want to say dependency, but
it is dependency. It is. It is dependency. I don't know. I think it's a little bit of boredom, a little bit of stress, a little bit of, I just feel like I had a long day of work and I just want to watch something that is silly or something that is not going to get my mind to work again. And I am not filling my time with productive things. And I feel the guilt after. I'm like, I spent a whole hour scrolling and I just lost a whole hour that I could have walked my dog. I could have meal prepped because I'm not eating healthy. This is just, I'm wasting my time. So the loop just continues because I didn't meal prep. So I'm not going to eat healthy. So and so and so.
Yep.
So it just feels guilty. And I think the reason is actually stress and boredom. And now I know my triggers. I think, if I go through the framework, I think I can break it.
Well, exactly. And if you think about that, stress and boredom, you said, are the triggers, right? So then if we think about making it harder, that's hard to do because you are going to have your phone in your place. So people with eating disorders and things that they're doing like that with this, like you said, we need our phone. Somebody calls us, we need to answer it. We get a text from our mother, we need to answer it. So you're on your phone, but I think giving it a name gives it a different place, right? Before you click, or you can do simple things like a timer. You still want to talk to you want to be social. You want to network with people on LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever you may use, Instagram, whatever the platform is. But maybe you just figure out that I'm going to do this. I'm going to allow that to happen. Instead of an hour, I'm going to give it 20 minutes or 15 minutes or whatever you're comfortable with. And that leaves you 40 minutes to do those other things. A walk with the dog is a great example. You know what? That covers two things. It gets you out moving. It helps your dog do what they need to do. And you get to think, and you're still using your mind in different ways. And it's just healthier experience. So walking the dog or reading or whatever it may be is a good way of replacing with a good habit. And by the way, I want to address one thing with breaking a habit that you do want to be consistent. The more consistency you build, the more that neural pathway gets built and it becomes part of you after you break that habit. But don't beat yourself up too much. You used the word guilt earlier. It happens, right? So, if you're trying to stop smoking and there's one day that's incredibly stressful and you just don't, and you smoke, what you shouldn't do is give up. Right? You shouldn't say, well, I gave in, the habit's broke, I couldn't break it. I'm done. Well, that's where the tracking and things get back on track tomorrow. So you go back in to say, okay, I know it was stress that made me have that cigarette. I know that I could have taken a pause and maybe taken a walk with my dog, something like that. But guess what? I couldn't track that I did it yesterday, but I'm going to do it today. Right? So that just gets you back on track. So don't worry about the shame. Don't guilt yourself. Just use it as a motivator to do better the next day. Does that make sense?
Very much, because it always goes with that. It starts with me just doing something and I say, might as well just get back to that habit. And that one where like I sit down with myself and say, hey, I did this because of that, but I still want to break this habit. So I need to stay on track. I think I'm going to do this next time. I'm just going to sit with myself.
Yes. Put yourself in the corner.
Will do. Well, I have a question. You've asked me earlier what triggers my social scrolling, and I actually had an answer. But what if someone doesn't know what their trigger are? Or like, what if someone actually can't trace back why are they doing this habit often?
Yeah, and that is a natural thing, right? So some people just get up and go drink coffee, and if they want to quit coffee, maybe is getting up the trigger, probably, but there's probably something else in between that getting out of bed and that coffee maker that actually does it. So you're right. So the challenge with not identifying triggers is big. So what I urge you to do, I didn't mean to say that word, but I will say it, is write an urge log. Right. So just keep an urge log, and you can do it on a notebook, paper, whatever. There's some out there I can send if somebody's interested. They DM me, I'll send them some structured urge logs. But just when you have that trigger, or when you have that moment and you say, oh, I didn't want to have that smoke, or I didn't want to eat that snack, just go back and say, what was the urge? When did I have that urge? What did it feel like? What was I doing at the time? And over time, if you keep an urge log, you'll start seeing patterns, right? And you'll see something that's similar: time of day, stress, something, location is a big one too. And just that urge log will help you kind of look back and say, okay, now I understand that trigger, and I either do something about that trigger or know that I'm in a trigger situation, so I'm going to handle it differently. So
I need to notice the pattern.
Yes, exactly. An urge log is really good for that kind of awareness, if you will.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I have gets me to another question is actually, we get a lot of satisfaction doing the habit that we want to break, and maybe replacing it is not satisfying us enough. Maybe walking my dog is not just enough of dopamine from getting me back to my place and grabbing that snacks, or like getting on my phone and scrolling. So what would I do if it's not satisfying me enough?
Well, I think and I hate to keep assigning exercises, but when we think about our hierarchy of values, right? When we think about what is valuable to us, sometimes we have to go back to that. And if you're in a job, by the way, that requires social media, or you're building your brand or something like that, if that's tied to your values, that you're trying to enhance your brand, then as long as it's activity to help you build your brand, then you don't necessarily need to stop it, right? But if it's activity just senseless, then you need to figure out, does it tie into which value? So for me, for example, my values, I have family, earning, things like that I really focus on. I've got 5 values that I'm passionate about. So if I've got something that for example, when I was drinking, when I decided to stop drinking, is because what I realized is I was putting it in front of some of my values. And those values might have been family, it might have been work, it might have been my dog, and whatever the value is. If you're putting that habit above them and it's not allowing you to do that, then that's when it becomes a problem. And if those values are truly important to you, then you need to revisit that dopamine hit. Is it worth not seeing your brother or sister? Is it worth not, whatever the case may be? You just got to reset those value structures, and it's not easy. The worst thing I hear when somebody says I want to quit, and somebody says, "Well, just stop." Well, okay, that's easy to say. It's very hard to do, and that's why when I opened the conversation, I was talking about these neural pathways. They're complex and they are stubborn, and it just takes a little. You just follow your system, and it'll finally change. I don't know if that answered your question about the dopamine hit.
It did.
Yeah. So social media is a really fascinating thing in the sense of, I saw a funny skit the other day that said, "Oh, it's Facebook, so it must be an old person, and in Instagram it must be a young person, et cetera, et cetera." But it's a multi-generational problem now. It really is. We've all become addicted to that next thing, and it's an interesting thing. That's where I think the moment that pause that allows you to just really think about: am I going to spend an hour here, or am I going to spend 15 minutes? Set a timer, clock it off at 15, and move on to something else, right?
Yeah. I need to start doing this because it's getting out of hands, and I need to break that habit.
Yeah.
Okay. One last question, because I don't know. I have plenty of questions. Now, I've told you at first that willpower is not enough, and you know that. How and then you said motivation is important. How do I stay motivated? Because I do it a week or two and then I break off again. So how can I stay motivated?
Well, that's just it. Willpower and motivation are kind of the same, Reem. You're not going to stay motivated to do that because it could be tedious. It could be painful. It could be like working out and sometimes be painful. It could be, so motivation's going to wane. What matters is small, consistent gains. So when you get off track, if at that 2-week mark that you said, you break it, is just get back into your system, get back into that, identify the trigger, talk to it like it's a name, all of those things, replace it with a good habit that just cycle back through that and keep it simple. If we overthink it, or we have this defeatist when we actually, I fell back, I had that bag of chips. What am I going to do? I guess I can never do this. That's when you got to reset that. You almost got to reset that motivation meter. And the best way to do it is do something different the next time. right? Instead of doing it again. So what if you had that cookie, right? Next time you go to that store, don't get the cookie, and that just repetition over time replaces motivation, and it becomes a new habit, right? Breaking a habit is actually building new habits. And so it's that little, just get back in your routine, your new routine for the habit you want to break, that is not do that activity, replace it, name it, all that stuff. Just keep cycling through it. So it's natural to have that 2 week or 1 week or 1 month even fall back down to say, I went out with friends and I decided to have a drink or something like that. Okay, don't beat yourself up too long about it. It's not where you want to be. So the next day you get back in your tracking and you get back into your system.
I think the tracking part also is going to help me a lot, because it's just visual, and I see, again, it's not just me feeling that I've stopped this habit for a while. It's actually visual, and it's proof that it's been a month that I'm quitting this. So even if I fall one day, I'm just going to sit with myself and say, hey, just one day is not going to stop me from continuing it. Starting from zero is going to hurt a little bit. So maybe next time I won't break it, because I'm going to start from zero.
Right. Well, it's there's a bit of a psychological bit there, right? So you fall off and you succumb to the bad habit. The next day you're back on it and you get 1 click. You did it. Day 2, you get 2 clicks. Day 3, and there starts to be a momentum building and a good feeling around. Okay, I just did it for 3 days. And sometimes the habit, it may be a struggle where you do it for 2 days and you fall back, and then the next time, well, let's just do it 3 days. And so sometimes not overemphasizing the end goal might be a good thing for some people, for some habits, right? If you say, well, I need to break this habit, but I just want to do it for a week this time, and then you have a lapse, and then you get back on it and say, I'm going to do it for 2 weeks at a time. So sometimes you need to build yourself up in sustainability that way, because you may struggle to find what you want to replace it with. You may try walking the dog and you find out, well, that's just not fulfilling enough. So you might have to find something else. And it's okay. I think the key element there is don't beat yourself up. Don't shame yourself. Just get back in the saddle. I'll use a Texas ride a horse analogy for you.
Well, that resonated, the Texas one. Okay, I have one last question, because you just triggered that question in my mind.
Okay.
Does it help to have companion while breaking a habit? Does it help to have a friend that we're both stopping together?
Absolutely. That accountability partner is huge. And that's consequently why habit tracking helps, because you feel like you've got a companion. If you use Time Bandit, you've got your little companion that's with you. But if you can get a real life companion to track it together with, it just makes it more fun, and it makes it more engaging, and it holds yourself accountable, because you have a partner in that behavior. And so absolutely, I strongly urge you. New Year's resolutions are great, and we all kind of make them personally. But if you can make them with somebody, that's even going to be better, because then you've got 2 people that are going to fight that motivation lapse, right? So there may be a day where, Reem, you call me and say, I don't want to do this today, so I'm not going to. And I can say, well, you should or could or would, or, and we can talk it out. And then the same thing may happen to me tomorrow, right? And then you can encourage me. So an accountability partner is fantastic.
Okay, I'll find someone that wants to stop scrolling. I'll just tag along.
Yeah, and maybe you can find something fun and rewarding together. Maybe it's, this sounds really boring and stodgy, but a book club. Maybe there's a book you could read and you could get together and say, hey, let's talk about that, But you get the point, right? It's still engaging the mind, and then you're both doing it, so you kind of can share your experience together.
Agreed. Well, I'm done with my questions, and I don't know if you want to add any more.
No, I just want to say, if you're interested in this topic, we have started a coaching program that can help you. And the coaching program is 3 short sessions. The first session is we define your hierarchy of values. The second session is we talk about the habits that support those values. And then the third one is priority management, because 2 weeks from now, there's going to be something in the way of you doing those things. And it's about how do you prioritize in an ongoing way. So hierarchy of values, habits, and the it says you might have found a partner. Somebody wrote on a LinkedIn user. I don't know who wrote it, but that's funny. So this coaching session I've got an introductory price. It's a low price, and it's 3 sessions. And again, like I said, hierarchy values, habits that support the values, and then priority management. We also have the book out there on Amazon. You can get the app on Apple or Google Play, and you can find me on LinkedIn, YouTube, or Facebook. DM me there if you want to talk further about this topic. And if you're not on those platforms, if you're on, and just go to our website at timebandit.io. You can see fill out a form, and we'll get in touch with you. So any of that, anyway, there's all of that stuff that we have to say, right? So.
Yeah, and you did well. Actually, I'm going to download the app right away. I'm going to start my day 1 today.
There you go. There we go. Well, one thing that I did want to say, you and I are going to rejoin a call in about a week or so. I think it's the 16th, and this will be published to do a build a habit session like this. So we'll check in on your day 1 on the 16th to see how you did.
Oh,
so
you're putting me on the spot.
Partners all over the place. So.
Okay, I have to do good then. I have to do good. I have a motivation.
Exactly. So we'll do that on the 16th. Thanks everyone for joining the live stream. Reem, thank you so much. It's so much better.
Thank you, Michael. I had so much fun.
Yeah. Have a great day. Good luck starting that break of a habit, and everybody will talk to you soon.